All right, it's Thursday, and that means you hit the download button on the unleashed version of the Steve Austin Show, where everything flies here, including the kitchen sink. Before we get started on today's shenanigans, let me ask you something. Have you ever been at work or maybe out with the family and friends, and you start to worry about, hey, did I lock the front door? Or did I close all the windows before I left? You think you left your house wide open to any thief who wanted to come in and grab some stuff? If you've ever asked yourself any of those questions, then you need Simply Safe Home Security. They got an arsenal of sensors to protect your entire home and keep your family safe. And here's the best part. You don't have to sign up for a long-term contract. There ain't no hidden fees. They won't gouge you on the price. You can get Simply Safe Home Protection for just $14.99 a month. Simply Safe is wireless and portable with a cellular connection built in. You get professional monitoring with police dispatch, so your home really is safe around the clock. And man, it's easy to install and even easier to use. Y'all know about my battles with technology, and even I can install and use Simply Safe. That's how easy it is. So protect your home the smart way. Visit simplysafeaustin.com. Go right now, and you'll also get free shipping on your order and a free keychain remote worth $25. It only takes a minute. Simplysafe.com. That's simply SIMPLI safe. Austin.com.
The following program is a podcast1.com production.
He started in a small town in Texas. Worked his ass off to become one of the most famous wrestlers of all time.
We're going to take care of business tonight, and that's the bottom line.
And now he's dominating the world of on-demand audio. And he's doing it for the working man.
This is a damn good outlet for me to spew the bullshit off my brain.
Yeah! This is the Steve Austin Show. Unleashed.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California, back in my office at 316 Gimmick Street. Goddamn, we took a little bit of a mini vacation, went down to Sparks, Nevada, and visited my brother-in-law. And I've been talking about going down to Texas and hunting doves with Ted Fowler 361. Had to make a compromise, had a little bit of a crunch on time, so we took the shorter trip, ended up out there in Nevada, and had a damn good time, about 6 days worth. I tell you what, we rolled in late on 395, got into Sparks, stayed for 6 days, and then figured, you know what? That first route we took, which is our normal route, was a little bit hairy at night. So let's take a different route and see how it compares. So we opted to go down the 5 to the something down through Sacramento, then shoot off and go to another highway and come in on the 5 in Los Angeles. It's about 50 miles further, but because you're on a better highway system, in theory, you'll make up time and the trip won't be as long. Bullshit. Motherfucker. I told my wife, we need to get out of here by 6 a.m., And then my brother-in-law pipes in and says, I got a friend that lives in that area. He says, if you leave at 6 a.m., you're going to hit rush hour traffic in Sacramento, and that's brutal. And I told my wife, I said, what about 4? And my wife says, 6 is pushing it. I was going to recommend 8. I said, I think we need to leave about 4. Anyway, I'm out there sleeping in my camper, and I slept with the door unlocked the whole time, but this time I had locked the door. And about 4 in the morning, someone's knocking on my door. I'm out there parked in my brother-in-law's driveway, sleeping like a baby. I'd already woken up, but I just reset my alarm clock because Kristen said she didn't want to leave till about 6 or 7. So if that's when she wants to leave, I'm down with leaving when she wants to. Make her happy. Anyway, she's knocking on the door. I get up. She goes, why'd you lock the door? I said, hell, I don't know. Instinct, I guess. She goes, are we leaving? I said, shit, I thought we was going to leave later. She goes, I couldn't sleep. So I said, goddamn, it sounds good to me. So we threw all our shit in the RV. My wife had already packed up everything to begin with because we was going to make that illustrious trip. She'd already fed Hirsch and Moolah. I went into the kitchen, made myself about 10 scrambled eggs, cup and a half oatmeal, get a little fuel in my belly, and we took off. Driving. Dark as night. God damn it. I hate driving in the dark. It was early in the morning, and I'm thinking to myself, when in the fuck is the sun going to come up? So Kristen got on her iPhone. You know, you can get on an iPhone these days and find out goddamn anything, any kind of fact, and find out when the fuck the sun's going to come up, so we got some goddamn light. Anyway, I'm driving like a fucking maniac. I'm running radar, around about 80, 85. We go through a checkpoint, and then the fog sets in. It's a kind of fog that, man, you can see about 100 yards in front of you, and that ain't worth a shit. So we're driving about 40, 45 miles an hour for about 30, 40 minutes to get that patch of fog, and then I light them up. And then we finally come on into Sacramento, and rush hour traffic was early. You talk about brutality. We come in on the highway. Siri's giving us directions, tells us to take his exit, which really fucked us up, put us in a real bad spot. Had to do a U-turn, go back across the highway, get on the right route. I think Siri had been drinking. Maybe it's just me, but she damn sure wasn't drinking coffee because she was giving us the goddamn wrong directions. I was mad as a hornet because if there's one thing I hate when you're traveling, because I've done this enough times being in business pro wrestling, especially when you're driving up there in New Jersey, those places with all those turnpikes. Brother, if you miss your exit, you're fucked because they got a cement girder run alongside the road and you can't do a U-turn. You got to keep going until you get the next fucking little place you throw the money or the quarters in the bucket or find a place to pull off and do a U-turn. And that's called backtracking. When you're going the wrong way and you got to track back to the area you just passed through to get to where you're going. If there's one thing I can't stand when I'm driving, is getting turned around and backtracking, and that's damn near what we were doing to a little bit, and I just can't stand it. I'm a time fanatic. By leaving early, we expected an on-time arrival here at Gimmick Street about 2 p.m. I believe when it was all said and done, I think we rolled in right about 3, so it wasn't too much discombobulation going on, but I can vouch for that Sacramento rush hour traffic, man. God damn, that was brutal. I will not be taking that route again. Here's a few of my takeaways after visiting the great state of Nevada. Had a great time out there. The mountains are beautiful. I think the state of Nevada, as my brother-in-law told me, is the most mountainous state in the United States of America. I think a lot of people think that Colorado has the most mountains, but indeed it is Nevada that has more mountains than any state in the United States. And I think the mountains are in about 90% of the state of Nevada. That being said, with the fact that they're also at altitude, there is a lot of snowfall up there. So when you get to Nevada, Sparks, Nevada, Reno area, Spanish Springs where my brother-in-law is at, I always tend to notice the vehicles on the road. Living out here in Marina Del Rey, California, always driving to Beverly Hills, you know, Los Angeles is Los Angeles. A lot of Mercedes, a lot of BMW, Porsche, Audi, Lamborghini, Ferrari, sports cars, you know, fancy SUVs, Range Rovers, Bentley GTs, stuff like that. You see all that stuff in Los Angeles, and you see a lot of mid-size and small cars, and a lot of those are the BMW, Mercedes, stuff that I just spoke of. But mid-size to small cars because parking in LA is a bitch. You don't see a whole bunch of pickup trucks, Suburbans, stuff that's been lifted, anything like that. You see it. You see your Cadillac Escalades and stuff. You certainly see your share of Suburbans or your GMC Tahoes. But when you get to Nevada, that's what you see out there. You see Suburbans, you see Excursions, you see Ford Explorers, you see pickups galore, you see a lot of Subaru. Almost everything out there on the road is a four-wheel drive vehicle because of the snow, because of the weather that they live in. You didn't see hardly, or I didn't see hardly any BMW, Mercedes, didn't see any Range Rovers. But a lot of the stuff I saw was lifted, but it was lifted for function, not for looks. And out of all the pickup trucks that I saw, you had your big three, Ford, Chevy, Dodge, kind of an equal displacement. But the number one selling truck that I saw in the Sparks and Reno, Nevada area, and y'all can give me some feedback if y'all live in this area out there, was a Toyota Tacoma TRD. And if you listen to the one podcast I did a week or two ago, my brother-in-law was driving his Toyota Tacoma TRD on a hunting trip up to Gerlach, and he hit a cow. They totaled his truck, and with some of the money that they got for his truck and with some money out of his back pocket or his bank account, went and bought a brand new Toyota Tacoma TRD. Four-wheel drive. He'll put an extra leaf spring in the back, lift the front end 2.5 inches, and give him some more clearance. But if you ride around over there, you will see more of those pickup trucks than you will see of any other truck out there. I drove his new truck to the gym. When I first drove it, I was like, man, this thing could sure use some low-end power. It rode smooth, had a lot of technology in the cab. It's got a crawl feature where if you're in a precarious area or a muddy, rocky area, you can hit this crawl button and the vehicle will move from either 1 mile an hour up to 5 mile an hour and basically take you through a course or your wherever you're at, some tricky technical driving. That was a neat feature. I never used it, but I thought it was a little sluggish off the line. Well, it was in economy mode. There's a sport mode button. When he pushed the sport mode button, the machine came alive. I think this vehicle, the 2016 version of the TRD versus, I think his is a 4-year-old version, that was the same truck that we drove to Chico, Nevada 2 years ago when we went to see our Nevada Brewing Company in Chico, California. So this one's got, I think, 40 more horsepower, a cunt hair more torque, and it was a real smooth ride. And if you go there, that's the truck that you're going to see more often than any other truck on the damn road. That was my takeaway from my trip to Nevada, along with the fact that it's a beautiful state, the weather was outstanding, the mountains are cool, and the people are very nice. The thing about out there where my brother-in-law lives, the people kind of keep to themselves. They're all on about 10-acre parcels. And they got regular neighborhoods like every other place does. But people are, they're more outdoorsy. Almost everybody I talk to out there hunted in some capacity. I mean, not everybody, but hunting is so big in Nevada because so much of the land is BLM or it's just land that belongs to the state. Whereas Texas, there's so much private property. Almost everybody there hunts. Everybody's cool with having guns. Nevada gun laws are terrific if you're into the great outdoors. But anyway, I had a good time out there, and we had a good time. But I tell you what, when we rolled into our driveway after that damn long drive, it was great to be back at 316 Gimmick Street. Great to be back here so I can get back on my podcast, get some more guests out here to try to see if I can rustle up some awards. Oh, that's bullshit. I'm not going to win any awards. But I got a Q&A for you today. I asked you to send your questions to questions@steveaustonshow.com, and that's what I did. And before we get to those questions, here's what I got going today. Loot Crate's got a new box for October. So all you people looking for gear, collectibles, and one-of-a-kind items from your favorite pop culture franchises, Loot Crate's got you covered for less than $20 a month, too. And if you want to bring your loot to a new level, get the bigger box with an even bigger loot. Get the Loot Crate DX box. And here's what's up for October's crate. Halloween is coming, so this crate's all about horror. Loot Crate's taken over 40 years of creepy, campy, bloody icons and putting them in this month's crate. You'll get items from The Walking Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Halloween. But if you want in on this horror-themed box, you have to get your order in by 9 p.m. Pacific time on the 19th, because that's when cutoff happens. That's it. It's over. The opportunity is gone. So get to lootcrate.com/unleashed. Get your order in by 9 p.m. Pacific time on the 19th, and get $3 off any new subscription. Again, that's lootcrate.com/unleashed to save $3 off any new subscription. And remember, when the Loot Crate horror crate's gone, it's gone. So get to lootcrate.com/unleashed now.
Steve Austin Unleashed.
All right, everybody, here we go on the podcast. I sent out a tweet on Steve Austin BSR saying, hey, man, I'm going to do a Q&A show. Send in your questions to questions@steveaustenshow.com. That's what y'all did, and so that's what I'm about to answer in about 3, 2, 1. I really didn't need to count myself in. I just thought I'd do that for some kind of professional podcast approach. Here's one from Chris. He said, Steve, I was listening to your show about your and Teddy's aversion to food sharing and hesitation on shaking hands with some dirty motherfuckers. I understand all that, and there's some filthy sumbitches I work with I wouldn't shake hands with if I was hanging from a cliff. My question is, with all that germophobia going on, how the hell did you handle getting in the ring with a guy, roll around all sweaty, and sometimes gigging and getting blood or color, as you call it? That seems like a hell of an environment, and being a germaphobe that you are, what's up with that? Well, Chris, I'll tell you quite frankly, yeah, I got a real phobia about shaking people's hands after they stick a finger in their nose and all that bullshit. I do on many occasions because what are you going to do? Say, hey, man, it was nice to meet you, but I saw you pick your nose during our conversation, so now I can't shake your hand. So it actually goes on a lot. I always hope that I've brought my alcohol scrub inside my vehicle when I climb back in that thing so I can clean my hands up before I go to picking my nose in my vehicle and going down the road. As far as gigging and getting color in the ring, man, the ring is that mat inside that ring is one of the dirtiest motherfucking things on planet Earth, because you've been walking around the bathroom, been walking through the dressing room, down the hall, and so all the stuff on the bottom of your feet are transferred to that mat. And so when you roll around on that thing and you end up getting color, you know, you got a blade, you do your job, you put the blade away. Now you got an open cut on your forehead or wherever you decide to cut yourself. And then you're inviting a whole host of bacteria, organisms, viruses, whatever's floating around to get into your system. But just the nature of the business was, you know, if the booker or the guy running the show, the agent running the show, wanted you to use color, man, there was no two thoughts about it. You just went out there, got color, hope you bled a lot, and it affected the match and had a good effect on the people. And it was just something you did. These days, I mean, you know, we're talking about 2016 now. The political climate is so much more different. Back in my day, you know, wrestling had already been exposed for what it is. We know it's a work. But, you know, sometimes that blood, that color can really amplify a match. And so you didn't think twice about it. But, you know, with AIDS, with hepatitis, all the bloodborne or whatever things that you could get in your system from another guy if you were bleeding, you just kind of look past it. And when you think back, it's really kind of dumb. But it was always accepted. That's just what we did, you know, when called upon. And these days, you know, a guy will get a hard way here or there. You know, the latest incident being the Brock Lesnar-Randy Orton thing, which drew all kinds of critique and criticism and opinions from everybody under the sun of, if you're going to do it, why not use the blood? That brought all kinds of criticisms and opinions, like, hey, man, if you're going to get color, it's that hard to do, you know, using an elbow with blunt force trauma. It sure would have been easier to use the razor blade for the same effect with less damage. So anyway, it's a slippery slope these days. I don't think the TV sponsors want to see it anymore. But to go back to your question, man, as big of a germaphobe as I am, whether I was getting color or the guy I was working with, maybe I would bust a guy open with. Maybe it was a Kurt Angle. Maybe it was an Undertaker. Maybe it was a Triple H. Maybe it was a Bret Hart. You know, it could have been anybody. But I just kind of figured, hey, man, those guys that I know, I don't think they got anything. That's kind of stupid. But it was just never an issue, and that's what we did when called upon to do so. Again, I'm talking in 2016, but this is way back in the day when you were a wrestler and you was going to get hit in the head with a chair or get color. That's just the way it was. And as simple as it is, it sounds pretty barbaric today, but that's the way it was. No issues from the kid here involving germs. Now, these days, if you'd ask me to go out there and get some color or someone else to get color while I was working with them, yes, I would take issue with it. Yes, there's been way too many there's been so many changes in the medical system. You know, not that we didn't know things were around back then, but just because of the nature of the way things have progressed, yeah, these days I don't think I'd be so carefree about it as I was back in the day. Here's a question, and this comes from a guy named Chris. He said, hey, Steve, I apologize if you've addressed this in the past, but why did you name your ranch the Broken Skull Ranch rather than the Smokin Skull Ranch? Well, he's referring to the Smokin Skull belt that I used to possess back in the WWF days when I decided I needed my own championship belt. And Vince wasn't very fond of that idea, but it was very effective, and we've sold a bunch of them. I actually thought about calling my ranch in Tilden, Texas, the Smokin Skull Ranch. But I said, you know what? Broken Skull Ranch sounds a lot cooler, and it doesn't have any ties to anything that the WWF created. I was able to purchase my ranch because I had to break my skull, literally, to buy it. And when I thought Broken Skull Ranch versus Smokin Skull Ranch, I just thought Broken Skull Ranch sounded cooler. And again, it was something that I had created, and I didn't want to tag off anything that was Stone Coldish or Stone Cold Steve Austin or had any kind of intellectual property rights that the WWF, could say was theirs. And so being totally independent with respect to the ranch, that's why I did that. Here's a question from old Tyler in Mississippi. Long time ago, Tyler went into Walmart and got his first CD, and he didn't have no idea what band or genre he wanted. And he looked up and down the shelves, and he finally saw a Smokin Skull, and that caught his eye. Well, being a huge mark, he knew that was a CD for him, and it was Stone Cold Metal, and it changed his life forever. Kiss, Def Leppard, Van Halen, Scorpions, etc. I was hooked on classic metal. Anyway, what's the backstory on that CD? Was it your idea? Was it pitched to you? Did you select all the songs? Was it hard to narrow down those songs? Tyler in Mississippi wrote that question. Hey, man, someone called the WWF back in the day, and they were in the music business. I forgot the guy's name. And they wanted to do a compilation album, call it Stone Cold Metal. It was their idea. And then, we just picked some songs, put them out there, and people could buy the album. So I selected every single song on that CD. Some of those songs that I picked on there are some of my most favorite songs of all time. And the idea was pitched to me. I selected all the songs. I wrote the liner notes to all the songs. And it was hard to narrow down to a few of the songs, but because back in the day, at that time in music, at that time in my life, those are some of the baddest songs that I knew. And that's how, and some of those songs, I can't even remember all of them offhand right now, but were so iconic. And shit like Dio. It doesn't get any better than that guy. And I was a huge Scorpions fan. But, yeah, so we put the thing together. I think it sold almost 500,000 copies, which I guess damn near would have been a gold record. So it was very successful. A few years later, we did one called Stone Cold Country, and I picked all those songs out as well. So that's how Stone Cold Metal came to be. Man, I tell you what, here's a question from Scott over there in Virginia. And he says, Steve, I know you're a huge Ric Flair fan, but is there one technical wrestler that you based your moveset from? And after your neck injury, was there a wrestler that you based your brawling style from? Man, you answered the question about the technical wrestling aspect. I was a Ric Flair fan and kind of emulated or adopted his style. I think if you look at the kind of the Ric Flair tree of people he influenced and had effect on, I'd say Terry Taylor would be someone who really pulled off the Ric Flair style better than anybody else. Also, you could say Nature Boy Buddy Landell. I wasn't a Flair clone, but he was very influential in my style. After I got dropped on my head, as far as the brawling style, I didn't borrow from anybody. That was just me doing what I thought needed to be done in the fashion that I thought it needed to be done based on the attitude and where I was coming from as a character. Stone Cold Steve Austin, there in those storylines that I was involved in. I was full of piss and vinegar, enraged, anti-authority, against the system. The system was fucking with me, poking me with the stick, and I responded accordingly. And it just worked out, like gangbusters for me. And it was a style that really caught on. And when you look at the great brawlers in the history of the business, one being the great Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen, Terry Gordy could brawl with the best of them, Cactus Jack could brawl with the best of them, and I could name on and on and on. But I didn't look to anybody to emulate as far as brawling. That was just me doing my thing. Here's a second question from Scott. Were there ever any match or matches where your opponent botched or missed a spot that threw you off your game completely? No, man, you're going to go in there and have matches with anybody, and some of them are going to be with the best people in the business, and you're going to blow a high spot. Whether I blew a high spot or my opponent did, you just get back on your feet and you just take off from there. And you try not to sell it. If the crowd notices it, especially those ECW fans way back in the day, they'd let you know it. You fucked up. You fucked up. And they keep repeating it. So I've never been in a situation like that. You always try to cover up anything that you can, and just don't play it off as a mistake. As far as a botched spot, that really threw my game off completely, I guess you could say the pile driver from Owen Hart in '97. That match was going to end with a Stone Cold Stunner. I called an audible after being a transit quadriplegic for about a minute, and we got out of that match, and that really was a classic fuck up. But anyway, that one was probably the major one. Anything is smaller than that. I mean, if you just miss an arm drag, miss a drop kick, miss a high spot tackle, drop down, hip toss, arm drag. Hey, if you blow something like that, just grab a hold. That's all you do. Just grab a hold, get everything back in control, and then you go from there. He also says, Steve, you ever going to have AA Arn Anderson on your show? Yes, I hope so. Yes, I hope so. I've been trying to get Arn Anderson on my show for about a year and a half. And a couple of times over there when the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California, when those guys come in, I've been trying to talk to Arn, and he's an agent for those shows. And so when WWE does a live television taping where there's Monday Night Raw, Tuesday SmackDown, live pay-per-view, everybody's on DEFCON 5, red alert, because matches are changing, finishes are changing, all kinds of shit's going on. So I've tried to get Arn on the show, but he's really, really busy. But he's one of the guys that I respect so much in the business. And going back to, my wrestling style, I would say I tried to emulate a little bit of Arn Anderson as well, who was a great, technician inside the ring. And I just loved his style. So Arn Anderson, I hope, will be on the show one of these days. And for a final question, he says, Steve, if the incident with Owen Hart didn't happen, you think it would have altered your career and how red hot you got? Man, that's real speculation. When I came out of that pile driver, I think I don't know, maybe gained a lot of respect for being able to finish the match. It certainly had to change my style. I think if I'd have kept wrestling at a scientific style, I don't know what would have happened. I can't say that I wouldn't have been as successful because, again, it's speculation. But, getting dropped on my head I wish it would have never happened. But maybe it was the best thing for me as far as a career standpoint goes. From short term, changed my style and I got over bigger than I ever got. Long term, had to get out of the business a lot sooner than I liked. So you can kind of take it for what it's worth. But, I had to change my style. I got dropped on my head, and that's about it. Hey, got to take a minute here to say thank you to the sponsors who let me do this for you for free every week, and that includes Dollar Shave Club. All you guys know about Dollar Shave Club. They've been a long-time sponsor of this podcast, and I've been getting their razors since they started. They're great quality blades for a fraction of the price of the big razor corporations. And DollarShaveClub.com/unleashed delivers those razors right to your front door. No more shopping mall or drugstore trips required. But did you know that Dollar Shave Club has more than just razors? They got a whole line of great products that will make you look and smell like $1 million. Like the Dr. Carver Shave Butter. Use that with your Dollar Shave Club razor, and your face will feel as soft and smooth as a baby's bottom. Dollar Shave Club has stuff for your hair and your face and your underparts. And once you're in the club, you'll see they got the best grooming products on the market. And they're all affordable. Your wallet will love you. And right now is your chance to see for yourself why so many of us love Dollar Shave Club. If you're not a member yet and have never joined, now is the time. You'll get your first month of razors free. Just pay shipping. After that, it's only a few bucks. So join today. Go to DollarShaveClub.com/unleashed. That's DollarShaveClub.com/unleashed. Here's one from Ricardo. He says, Steve, you always say nobody trained you on how to throw a chair shot or take one. My question is, how do you physically prepare yourself to take a chair shot or any type of object shot? What were you thinking mentally before taking a suplex on the concrete, floor, ramp, etc.? Pretty much, how do you prepare your body for a hardcore match? Well, Ricardo, you don't really prepare yourself for a chair shot. I mean, you're not psyching yourself up. A lot of times, it's going to be on a cover. You expect to get hit in the back or on a blind feed, turning around, bam, and there's a chair. I was always the guy that put his hands up on a chair shot because that's what you're supposed to do when you see something harmful happen. Put your hands up. So I would trap or deflect a lot of that blow, and you just be ready you just got to be ready to take it because it's going to hurt. And in that generation, in that attitude era, everybody was swinging chairs like a motherfucker because you had to. And you weren't trying to kill a guy, and there's actually an art to throwing that chair, kind of pull off at that last minute or not follow through. Like if you're going to hit a baseball, you're trying to knock that thing out of the park. So giving one is a total, you got to bring it, but you don't want to kill a guy. But to answer your question, taking that thing is just absorbing that blow. To all the guys who took them without their hands up, that was their style, and more power to them. Some guys gauged toughness on taking a chair shot without using your hands, and they thought that the guys that used their hands were pussies. I never tried to be a tough guy. I was pretty tough in my day, but my style was to always put your hand up. As far as like an object, hey, man, I've been hit in the head with a lot of ringside bells, a lot of those monitors that they pull out of the announce tables. When you get hit with something like that, you just go along for the ride, and you're hoping the guy's going to hit you flush and square with said object. And Triple H with that sledgehammer, I tell you, that's a guy who could really work that gimmick and make it look effective. Because anytime you get hit in the head with a steel, because anytime you get hit in the head with a sledgehammer, goddamn, that's going to hurt. But I've never, ever been hurt by anything that Triple H ever did. I don't think he ever hurt anybody with that sledgehammer. And so it's basically trust. And don't get me wrong, a lot of guys have been hit with a lot of objects and been split wide open. So, it kind of goes with the territory. If you get busted open, you're going to get stitches afterwards. As far as a suplex on the concrete, as far as that goes, rather than taking like a flat-legged landing or just a regular suplex, you kind of bring your feet down just to stop that cement from impacting the back so much. So there's definitely an art to that, but even if you don't put your feet down, it is what it is. You just want to make a flat landing. Don't try to land in stages. And it's also up to the guy giving a suplex. But pretty much that's just standard fare. He's not really doing anything different. He's just giving you a suplex. As far as slamming a guy on the cement, when you're in the ring, you can slam the shit out of somebody. But on cement, you don't really just pick them up and drive them through the cement. You pick them up and you can rotate them in a quick fashion, but then you just drop them and let gravity take effect so that it has the look that, goddamn, that really hurt that sumbitch. But because of the way you dropped them. And take for example this, and it's a whole different thing. But if you watch the way like a Big Show or a Kane or somebody like that will choke slam a guy, those guys are so strong that when they pick you up by your throat, we call that the goozle, and they lift you up, and their arm is about 8 feet in the air, and they drop you down. Well, that left hand is usually on the small of your back, and they're still using your throat. So they'll decelerate you before they actually drive you into the mat. And so some of those guys get up there real high, and they float down like a damn butterfly, but the effect is still that they choke slam you from about 8 feet up, and it looks impressive as hell. Credit to those guys for being good at what they do. Here's a question from old Ryan. Steve, I was curious about your entrance music over the years. I believe it started with the Rage Against the Machine song. It changed from when you were first being stone cold around your face turn to then the Disturbed version, then back again. What was your input on the process? Well, the first ring music they wrote for me, when I came in there as the ringmaster, I don't even remember what they were playing for me. And I guess they're probably using the same shit when I came out as Stone Cold as the first incarnation, when I didn't have the skulls on the back of my jacket. It was just kind of some slow music. And that's when I hit Jim Johnston with Rage Against the Machines, Bulls on Parade. Whatever you hear, that original Stone Cold theme song that Jim Johnston created with the glass breaking, the sirens, all that stuff, and that's him on the guitars. That's all Jim Johnston. He wrote that song. Bulls on Parade was the inspiration behind it. And then they just saw fit to kind of change the music or fuck with it, like when they wanted Disturbed to do it. I think that might have been when I was on my heel run. And, that was just kind of them internally saying, hey, man, why don't we do this with your music? Let's try this. And I was wide open to it. I was busy doing my thing, and they thought that, sometimes the change in the music would affect the character or the way that people thought about the character. And, of course, these days, when I go out, it's just classic, Stone Cold glass breaking, original version, 1.0, and that's the way it was. I didn't really give a shit about the music back then, but it was cool when the guys from Disturbed did my music. Nice guys. I got a chance to talk to them a little bit, and they did a really good job of it. Here's a question from Dennis. Steve, what's the psychology by playing the theme music of somebody doing a run-in to save a match? For me, it kills the suspension of disbelief. If I see a friend getting beat down, I wouldn't pause to ask an audio guy to hit my theme music. I'd be out there whooping ass. I don't recall Hogan's music playing when Elizabeth dragged him out to help out the Macho Man when Honky Tonk Man and the Hart Foundation were throwing him a beating. To me, those little details help sell the product, not going for the cheap pop of hitting the music. Dennis. Well, I get your point, Dennis, because someone's out there getting the shit kicked out of them, and all of a sudden the guy's watching the monitor, and there could be 30 guys back there watching the monitor when you think about it, because everybody's backstage. So all of a sudden one guy says, hey, man, I can't stand it. I can't stand it any longer. They're kicking the shit out of Macho Man. Let me go out there and just beat the fuck out of them and help Macho Man down. At a small building, that works just fine. But in a big building for television, god damn, you got to understand, it's a television show. So all of a sudden, I'm with you. It does kind of make you kill the suspension of disbelief or whatever you worded that. But, man, on television, when the people at home hear that glass break because Stone Cold's coming to do a run-in, or if The Rock's coming in to help me out, or whoever it was doing whatever it was, I feel you. I get you. If it's organic by nature and a guy just runs out, then you can see him once they get in the ring to help the guy out. But when you play that music, it just lights up a crowd like you've never seen it before. I mean, you go back to some of that classic stuff that I did. I guess it was during the Invasion angle. So many people have sent me videos of that from YouTube. You had 40 guys, whatever, out there in the ring just beating the shit out of each other. And then all of a sudden, crash of Stone Cold music. That fucking building, it blew the roof off that building, and everybody jumps up and raises their hand up in the air. And what an announcement that was. Just the sound of that glass and seeing the visual of Stone Cold going down to the ring. And I wasn't in a hurry either. I was going down there to whip somebody's ass, and I did. Had I just walked down there, well, the people would have just seen me at different times. Okay, oh, there's a guy. Someone, oh, here's a guy. There he is. There's Stone Cold. But you get that glass going all at one time, and all of a sudden here comes Stone Cold. The reaction, purely television, my man. Purely television. So I feel you, but that's the reason why. Here's one from Vincent. Steve, I'm making margaritas this weekend and couldn't find your recipe with Ted Fowler online. Would you mind mentioning it again on Thursday's podcast or later this year when you and Teddy get together for hunting season? I just had to ask my wife, hit the pause button as I asked her what margarita mix we use. I use Jose Cuervo margarita mix. It's one of the best ones I've tasted. Yeah, it's going to be a little sweet. It's probably 24 milligrams of sugar per serving. There's another guy that wrote in. He's using his 20-ounce Yeti tumbler. So on all my margaritas, you fill that glass up with as many rocks as you can. You got to have a lot of ice. And I get a bigger glass or bigger cup or tumbler to pour the mix into to mix it back and forth, and then get the edge of the cup wet and put it in my margarita salt. So the process goes like this for me. In a 20-ounce tumbler, fill it with rocks. Then I get a shot and a half tumbler, a 1.5-ounce tumbler. I put in 2 tumblers of Patron Silver. You can use any tequila you want. I use Patron. So in goes 2 shots, and then I pour in the margarita mix almost to the top. I leave about an inch of room there. Then I'll hit it with just a cunt hair of triple sec, just a little bit. Take a little bit of that edge off, and then I'll dump it back and forth or keep mixing it. I've already got the salt on the rim. I'll give it a taste, and then I'll get that shot glass, and I'll just freely pour tequila from it to just light it up on fire just a little bit more. So by the time I'm done in a 20-ounce tumbler, you have 3 to 4 shots of actual tequila in that mix. If it's too sugary, if it's too sweet, you don't have enough tequila in it. And you want that tequila to bite just a little bit to remind you that it's there, and that's when I know that my margarita is strong enough. I do not recommend that anybody drive anything, any kind of vehicle, or make any kind of decisions while drinking Broken Skull Ranch margaritas or any kind of margaritas or alcoholic beverages for that matter. So don't drink these things and go anywhere, no matter who you are, what you're doing, where you're at. But that's my formula for a margarita. Sometimes you go to these bars and these motherfuckers start putting all kinds of ingredients in there, and then they'll grab a thing of orange juice. And you don't put orange juice in a margarita. I don't on mine. It's basic mix. Get that shit at the damn liquor store, at Walmart. That's all the places you need to go. And that'll make you a damn badass margarita. And that's how I make mine. And then for some reason now, like Teddy says, when some people ask him about my formula, he just said, Steve makes them, I drink them. And that's true. And I'll make Ted's about like I make mine, but I make mine a cunt hair hotter than Teddy's because that's the way we roll out there. All right, let's take another question. This is coming from James. He's got 2 questions. He says, Steve, you said that after the MSG curtain call, you got put in line to win the 1996 King of the Ring. If the curtain call never happened, what were the plans for you going forward if Triple H had won the King of the Ring? Man, there weren't no plans, and I don't know what would have happened. I'm glad about the curtain call now, but I remember I was very confused watching it all go down because I was right there behind the curtain watching it all, and I couldn't believe these guys were breaking kayfabe. But because those guys went south and Triple H and Shawn Michaels remained in the company, Vince wasn't going to screw Shawn Michaels because Shawn was already cantankerous. He was his world champion, and he needed him happy, so he had to punish somebody, and he punished Triple H. And he told me 2 weeks going into the event, I was going to win King of the Ring. Had I not won that event, Austin 316 would have never happened because Stone Cold said so. It would have never happened organically. So I don't know what would have happened. I might have been a mid-card guy my whole career, and that's the bottom line. Who knows what would have happened? I'm just glad it did happen, and I'm glad I got the opportunity. Here's another question from James. Steve, I'm also a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. If you had to pick one song, which would be your favorite? And do you like any other blues artists? Oh, man, I can name a bunch of other blues artists I like, but there's too many good Stevie Ray songs that me and my wife both like. Riviera Paradise is one of them. Couldn't Stand the Weather is another one of them. Pride and Joy is one. I always like Crossfire. You know, Mary Had a Little Lamb is one of my favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan songs. Who could play Mary Had a Little Lamb and make it sound as badass as it is? I could give you a whole bunch of them, but just off the top of my head without looking at a list, that's all I got for you. But Stevie Ray Vaughan, man, nobody played guitar like that guy. And I just got finished having Nita Strauss from Alice Cooper over here on the podcast, and she's incredible. But, man, there's nobody that plays like Stevie Ray did. He played those big-ass strings. He played them high, and he bent the flying fuck out of them. Here's one. Hey, Steve, what has been your favorite podcast to date that you have done? Man, I don't listen to my podcast. I've had so many fun conversations with guys in the business. But one of the ones that I listened to a few times, probably a lot back in the day, was Steve Austin versus Mr. Fly. And I created that on the spot, completely one take. I thought about it for about 2 hours, and then all the pieces just fell into place. So that would be Steve Austin versus Mr. Fly. And again, not to shortchange any of my guests, because I've had some great conversations with some real cool people, but that would be my favorite podcast, I think, that I've ever done, just based on bullshit and entertainment value. Here's another question from Joseph. Steve, what did you think of your 2001 run in the WWE prior to turning heel at WrestleMania? I thought it was a great run and enjoyed your segments with Stephanie McMahon, etc., but would love to know your take on it. Here's the thing. I always tell people I don't remember half my career. I don't remember my 2001 run. I do remember the WrestleMania package featured me, The Rock, Limp Bizkit, My Way, Paul Heyman, Jim Ross doing the audio on that. That was one of the greatest parts of my career was WrestleMania 17 and the build. I felt what I do remember. I felt as a babyface, I was starting to flatline a little bit. I needed to reinvent myself to a degree. I was a little bit burned out, I think, because I was running real hard, partying a lot. Still love the business, was working my ass off. We was selling out. Rock was hot, and that match was very important to me because I needed that match. When I said in that promo, I need that belt, Rock, I need it more than anything you can ever imagine, that was a shoot statement. I meant it. And that program kind of re-energized the Stone Cold character. Had I called an audible, told Vince, I'm staying baby, here's a stunner, I wish I would have, because I think that would just launched us, all the way until the, back into 2003 when I had my last match with The Rock in 19 in fine fashion rather than turning heel and struggling so much and trying to swim upstream, so to speak, working as a heel because people didn't want to see me work as a heel. I got to do a lot of cool things, push the envelope creatively, but I don't remember the whole build. I don't remember the whole run of 2001, but I specifically remember Clash in the Beers. That segment happened in Detroit, probably at Cobo Arena or Joe Louis. But I remember that night specifically. It was a great build, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, need to give a quick word of thanks to all the sponsors of the Steve Austin Show and to you guys for supporting all the sponsors. And that, of course, includes the one that could win you some serious instant cash. DraftKings.com, the destination for 1 week fantasy MMA. I know you guys love MMA as much as I do. You're into the fighters. You know their strengths, their weaknesses, and their stats. So put your knowledge to the test and play MMA during this week's epic fight card at DraftKings.com. And if you use my promo code Steve, you can play for free with your first deposit. So draft your MMA lineup and play to win over $100,000 in prizes this weekend. Just pick 5 fighters. Stay under the salary cap and rack up points based on how your team of fighters performs. Outscore the competition and win some serious cash. At DraftKings.com, every significant strike, takedown, submission, and knockout brings you closer to the payday. So hurry to DraftKings.com now to choose your fighters, and you can seriously cash in this Saturday night. Use the promo code Steve and play for free with your first deposit. That's my promo code Steve to play for free for your shot at over $100,000 in prizes. Only at DraftKings.com. Eligibility restrictions may apply. See website for details.
Steve Austin. Unleashed.
All right, everybody, here we go for round 2, answering your questions. You sent in the questions to SteveAustinShow.com. I had to pick up my laptop computer and relocate to another room because the yard guys are here. And y'all ain't listened to the podcast to hear a bunch of mowers and blowers out there in my yard. So I'm in the center part of my house. Anyway, back to the podcast. Here's one from Richard. Hey, Steve, it's Richard McMickens up here in NorCal. My question to you is, have you seen the new Bronco yet? If so, what's your take on it? If you haven't, I've attached a link below. Hey, I checked it out. I've heard about it. I've had about 30 people email me the fact that Ford is going to come out with the illustrious Bronco once again for 2018. Here are my concerns. After seeing the original renderings, some of the drawings, the latest picture that they put out in some of the press, I'm worried that they're going to make this thing too small. One of the things which is so wonderful about the generation of Bronco that I have, the 95 and 96s, the last generation, is the interior space in those things is phenomenal. The center console is not too big. You have all kinds of shoulder room, plenty of headroom, leg room. It's just awesome. From the drawings and the pictures I've seen, this thing is going to be a little tight inside. Hopefully, by reading some of the motor options, it's going to be powered by a pretty good motor, especially if they put that one big-ass motor they're talking about putting in there. It's 500 or 600 horsepower, which would be flat-out awesome. If they put that one out, I might get one. But, again, my biggest concern is interior space of the Bronco, because the ones on my 95 and my 96s is so cavernous. It's wonderful, and that's part of the allure. That's part of the attraction. That's one of the reasons why I love my Ford Bronco so much. Turn on a dime, spit out a nickel change. You can parallel park anywhere. Perfect clearance on underground parking. I love them. These new technology Broncos with 2018 technology would be absolutely wonderful if they make the interior big enough. So I'll stop rambling about that, but I hope they do it right. I certainly hope they do it right. Here's a question from Bennett Miller. He says, "Hey, Steve, I've heard you mention that Undertaker would sell on the run. Can you explain what selling on the run means?" No, man, selling on the run is just kind of a back pedal. You're always trying to get away from your opponent. You're kind of a little bit on offense, but you're not just laying there in the ring. You know, it's kind of a back pedal type thing, always moving around or rolling around. It's a very active sell. I wouldn't necessarily say you're always backpedaling, but you're trying to get the guy off of you. But you're certainly in a sell mode. You're registering everything that he does for you. But because Undertaker was so big, you know, he had to sell on the run. A smaller guy would chase him down, and he'd sell like a sumbitch for anybody. But that would be his style of selling. Active, backpedaling, trying to fight, but being overpowered because he's hurt. And so that's simply what I mean by selling on the run. And that's why when I was talking to Tim Kell just the other day, like Roman Reigns, he needs to pick his head up. He needs to sell on the run, be a little bit more active. He has a bad habit of dying when he sells. To his credit, he will sell for anybody. He's very unselfish in the ring with regards to that. But because he sells so much, he just needs a more active sell to keep those people buying in so he can get that sympathy. He's a big, good-looking guy. He's putting his game together. Come up better storylines for the guy. I still have high hopes for Roman Reigns, and it was interesting in hearing Tim Kell's take on Roman Reigns and what he thinks about the guy. And he needs a little bit more fire, a little bit more fire on offense, a little bit more active sell on a run on defense, and I think that'd help him out. Good luck to Roman Reigns. Here's a question. This comes in from Bill Holtz. Good day, Steve. I'm a long-time fan of yours and wrestling in general. I heard you discussing your RV on this week's show. My wife and I are approaching retirement age and have considered purchasing one. Do you have any thoughts on RVs for beginners? Hey, man, if I was going to tell anybody to buy an RV, you know, depending on your financial situation, the type of vehicle that you already have, if you have a pickup truck and you're just going to go camping, a bumper pull is fine and dandy. It's very simple. You don't have to modify anything. If you have a 3/4 ton pickup or a 1 ton pickup, you might consider a fifth wheel, which are very easy to pull because of the pivot point being in the back of your bed rather than on the back end of your truck. Easy to pull. We went to a Class C, and we rented several campers before making our decision. We rented a Class A, and that thing was a little bit longer than what we needed, and it was all fine and dandy, but it just rode like shit. Not to say all Class A's rode like shit. This particular one did. And how much you're going to use it. You know, we finally got rid of that Class C that we have, and we got into a Class B, which is basically a very small sleeping space up above the cab and a queen-size bed in the back. It's basically a dog hauler. I always recommend, if you're going to go Class C, make sure you get a big enough camper. The one we have is extremely small. I wish we would have bought one that's probably about 3 or 4 feet longer, because once you stop and you're at your destination, traveling with a couple dogs, you're going to need space. Definitely consider a Class C with a slide. Maybe 2, but at least 1. Class C's very handy. It'd be my go-to thing because we have other vehicles, and that's what I would suggest. But if you have a pickup truck and you're not going to use this thing all the time, or like you said, you want something to drive around once you get there, you can unhook your truck and use your truck to go places. To go back to where we're at with the Class B, once we plug in, I'm not going to pull everything in and drive and go get something. So we're kind of stranded, so to speak. But again, my camper's so efficient. This past weekend in Reno, when I went to the gym, I just unplugged my electricity. I never hooked my sewer up, and I drive my RV to the gym just because it was me. And Kristen was sleeping in the house with her family. But me being the camper that I am, I just elected to sleep out in the camper and kind of rough it, so to speak. So that's your only issue. But I dig a Class C. I just like, because of our situation with the dogs, we don't want a fifth wheel or a tag bumper because we want the dogs traveling with us. If we were to get a fifth wheel, the back seat is not enough room for Hershey and Mula. They're pretty big dogs. So since we want the dogs with us, that's why we go Class C, Class B. If I was to go fancy and I could justify using one more often than I do, because most of the time ours sits in covered storage, I'd get a Class A, and I'd get a badass Class A, and with several slides on it. But, you know, the bigger unit you have as far as RVs go, when those things break down, man, you got bigger problems. So I would go midsize Class C. If it's just going to be you and your wife, maybe something around 28 feet. Once you start getting into those 31-footers, stuff like that on a Class C platform, I really consider them overbuilt for the chassis, and I think they're a little wobbly and a little unsafe. That's my opinion. All right, let's get on with another wrestling question. Hey, Steve, the question today is coming from London, England. I love the podcast. Make sure I catch both the shows every week. I was watching your match with Rock at Wrestlemania 17 the other day, and it's one of my favorite matches of all time. The story, the psychology, the action, just great. But my question to you is, at what point do you go to yourself in the ring, man, this is a damn good match? Do you get to that point, or is it something you just have to wait until you go backstage and talk to other people to know it was a great match? That's from Rich Lee. Hey, man, Rich, you know when you're out there if you've got something good going because you're listening to every single thing that crowd is doing, and you're just clicking with that guy in the ring. As far as WrestleMania 17 goes, or WrestleMania 13, but we're talking about 17 here, we knew we had that place hook, line, and sinker from the build. All we had to do was go out there and do our jobs. The whole time, you know, me and Rock aren't out there talking as, hey, how do you think we're doing? But we both know that we're knocking this motherfucker out of the park. And every time Rock would do something, get a response. Every time I did something, get a response. I mean, they were teetering on every single action that we did. And then all the stuff at the end. It's one of those things where you're so focused on the task at hand, completing that match, you know it, but you don't think about it until you get in the back. But you certainly know if you're stinking the joint out as well. And that's probably something that's really will get inside your head because maybe your program just wasn't built right. Maybe you're following a hell of a match that just can't be followed. Take, for example, First Blood match, myself and Kane, who I love to work with, is a great, great worker in his own right. And we had to follow Mick Foley and Undertaker from a Hell in a Cell match. Those guys put on the match of the year and the performance of a lifetime, and that match was so incredible. You just can't follow something like that. And me and Kane worked our asses off. I was built right. Kane was built right. The whole build going in with Kane dumping the blood on me, I think that happened in Austin, Texas. It was just awesome. And then he used that little gimmick thing at his throat, and it said, Austin. He was talking about beating me, cut that badass, really scary promo. We worked our asses off, but we couldn't follow that match. Now, we weren't both thinking, hey, man, this is a dud. It was a pretty damn good match. But it's one of those things that gets in your head, just being what it is. But you go back to the WrestleMania 17 match, neither one of us at any time was resting on our laurels. Because you start doing that, you're working a 25-minute match, say, and around 12 minutes you think, oh, yeah, man, this is great. We got him. This is great. hey, you've got to keep them for another 13 minutes. You got to build to a climax and then do the go home, make sure everything comes off all right, because all of a sudden you're going to go do 25, 30-minute match and everything's going great at about the 24-minute mark, and then you shit the bed. Well, then the finish sucks. So then you had them for 24 minutes, and then you fucked up the finish or discombobulated something, and you ruined the whole match. So you know what's going on while it's happening. Here comes the blower over here to the alley. I'm moving to another room and continuing the podcast. All right, so you know why I sound so razor sharp and on top of my game on today's podcast? Alpha Brain. I took a couple Alpha Brain right before I hit that record button, and you are witnessing the amazing effects right now. So thanks to Alpha Brain and to Onnit, the folks who make Alpha Brain. And if you want to be as laser focused as I am when I do these podcasts, then you need to get yourself some Alpha Brain. Just go to onnit.com/Steve, order you up some Alpha Brain, and save 10% off your order in the process. You can get 10% off anything you order at onnit.com/Steve, and that includes Shroom Tech Sport and T+. Shroom Tech Sport will give your workout a boost, helps you go longer and recover faster. It's made with natural ingredients, and it isn't loaded up with artificial stimulants. And T+ increases strength and power. It'll improve your athletic performance, and it's safe to use if you're competing. So go take advantage of this 10% discount off your order. Just go to onnit.com/Steve. And another great thing about Onnit and all their products is, if they don't work the way they're supposed to, you can get all your money back, no questions asked. Money back guarantee. So go to onnit.com/Steve to get your 10% discount off all supplements. That's onnit.com/Steve to get 10% off your order. All right, moved into another room. Here we go, and again with another question. This comes from Nicholas. Steve, I'm going to take you back to The Rancher's Way, an episode on July 16, 2016. On this podcast, you and Teddy Fowler, which was his debut on the show, discuss how you'd like to test yourself against the nose of the white-tailed deer. You both discussed getting close to a deer and making a close kill via a bow. I've never heard it mentioned since, so I was wondering if you bow hunted at all since 2013, and if so, how did it go? Well, I'll tell you how it went. I never got around to getting any bow hunting done. I was busy practicing and shooting targets and stuff like that, but just never broke out the bow because we had so much work to do out there with our rifles and then getting on a tractor, getting all the stuff mowed, so never got a chance to get out the bow. And now this year, with 2016, just had shoulder surgery, so I can't pull back a bow this year. Ted has talked about it, so Ted might get out there this year. We'll have to see about that. I still enjoy shooting my bow in the yard against my targets and doing that. Now, I'm just waiting on the shoulder to heal up, but haven't got anything with a bow yet. But my first thing that I will go after will be a javelina, and I will make sure that I am very proficient with the bow before I pick that thing up and get into business with the bow. Hey, man, it's about time we ran into a football question. It goes, hey, Steve, this is coming from Peyton. Huge fan. I'm from Alabama, and so I'm a big Alabama football fan. My question is, when it comes to college football, do you have a favorite? Man, I tell you what, I got a couple favorites. I really love what Nick Saban has done wherever he's been, and I've been a Roll Tide fan for a long time, so I would call the Alabama Crimson Tide kind of my number one team. But I'm also a huge Urban Meyer fan, and following him from every program that he's gone to, especially down in Florida, and now that he's over at Ohio State, I guess that's his home state. I'm a huge Urban Meyer fan, and so I like the Ohio State Buckeyes as well. And I like the Ohio State Buckeyes, back in the day when they had Trussell coaching. Then they got into some issues. But those would be two of the teams that I really like, Alabama and Ohio State. Now that Jim Harbaugh is over at Michigan, I like to see what the Michigan program is going to do. Right now they're sitting at 4-0. Hopefully they'll have a successful run and get into the playoff system. Some of the other teams, being out here in California, you always wonder if Southern California is going to put anything together. But they don't seem to put it all together yet. UCLA's, they're so-so. Oregon was exciting for a while there. I've really been impressed with the Houston Cougars. My dad played football at Rice University way back in the day in the late 50s. And this was back when Rice University was, a contender in the Southwest Conference. being so close to the Houston Cougars, it's nice to see them. What are they at, number 4 or 5 right now as we speak nationally? And they've been doing great. It's been great to see what the guys over at Louisville have done since Charlie Strong left there, built up a hell of a program, and then transferred to Texas where they're not doing so great. But I think Charlie Strong needs another season at least of getting his recruits in that system before they do something with him, because I think he's a great coach, but he's got to have a chance to get his players in the system. There was a hell of a game between Louisville and Clemson. Oh, Dabo Swinney's got something good going down over there in Clemson, and I thought Louisville was going to win that game. And I tell you what, man, Lamar Jackson, what's his name? The quarterback for Louisville, man, that guy's badass. And so is Deshaun Watson for Clemson, both guys. But it was Deshaun Watson's day as they were able to hold off a very game Louisville team. So, but my favorites, going back to your questions, is Alabama, and I like Ohio State, and I like Michigan now. And I wasn't really a Michigan fan until Harbaugh goes over. No, back in the day, Bo Schembechler and all that stuff, you had to like Michigan back in as well. And let's move on. We got a WWE question. All right, got a Flying Brian Pillman question. It's coming from Decal Derek over in North Wales, Pennsylvania. Yo, Stone Cold, my question is about the great Brian Pillman. While you were running an ECW, Brian joined the Horsemen and started his transformation into the loose cannon character. Did Brian put you in the know on his new persona? Were you guys still in regular contact when he jumped to ECW? Any thoughts or stories are appreciated. Man, I tell you what, Brian didn't smarten anybody up to what he was doing. He worked everybody. And if anybody ever talked to Brian and they dropped some 411 on what he was doing, I'd like to hear it. There's a famous story one time, I guess it was happening in New York City, but Brian went up to somewhere when the WWF had a function going on and got Vince McMahon all riled up about something. And then I guess he kind of gave, Brian gave Jim Ross the Iggy, or kind of winked at him, or told him that it was a work. And the old man, Vince, was pissed off. And Jim Ross said to Vince, "You've been worked." And that was Brian doing his thing. Brian never called me and said, well, Brian called me all the time, but Brian never called me and said, "Hey, kid, here's what I got going next." And he was totally in character 100% of the time. He worked himself out of a contract that was signed. They terminated a contract because he wanted everything to be a shoot, and that was the biggest work of all time, to terminate an existing contract to play into his storyline when he knew he was going to jump. So Brian didn't smarten anybody up to anything, and that guy was way ahead of his time. Really took a lot of guts to do what he was pulling off, and it was absolutely incredible. I really wish Brian would have lived to see, first of all, how the business would unfold, but also to see how his career could have unfolded, maybe had he gotten that foot or that ankle healthy. But he was a dynamic person, a dynamic personality, a hellacious professional wrestler. He was born for the business. But, man, as far as I know, Brian kayfabed everybody on that loose cannon shit. Guys didn't know if he was crazy, shooting, working, what, because there was no separation. It was badass. All right, next question comes from a guy who's had a little bit of shoulder surgery, Brandon Williams. He says, "Hey, Steve, how the hell did you fall asleep after your shoulder surgery? Everyone told me the recliner is the best way to do it, but being a guy that's used to sleeping on his stomach, this is a drizzling shits. Any help is great. I got a long journey ahead of me, and one that you can relate to." You damn right I can relate to it. I tell you what, man, I used to be a stomach sleeper way back in the day until I had that C3-4 fuse, and that changed everything. So then I turned into a back sleeper. And then I had my left rotator cuff done, and that turned me into a side sleeper. It first started off on my back, and then started off on my side because of my sleep apnea. Then I had this right rotator cuff done. And, Brandon, what I do now and what I did for this surgery, my first rotator cuff, I slept in a recliner because I rehabbed at the Broken Skull Ranch. I was trying to kayfabe the surgery, but this time I didn't really give a shit. But my secret for this approach was Just stack up. Your first week out, you're not going to sleep anyway. You'll fall asleep a little bit. But all I did was put 2 or 3 pillows against my backboard, and I basically just kind of sleep in a seated position. And I'm reclined, but just sleep like that. And both of my arms, I got my fingers kind of clasped on my hands, and that's my current sleep situation. Because that's the way that I healed up from my right shoulder surgery. That's the way I sleep now. So just try a couple of pillows on your back. Don't sleep on your side, and hopefully you'll have some success. I was talking to Sheldon Benjamin the other day. He just had a rotator cuff surgery, and I told him right before he had a surgery, I said, man, Sheldon, I've had a lot of damn surgeries, but the shoulder surgery is the worst. And I talked to him. I guess he was about a week out. He was in Dallas going to see his doctor. And he goes, Steve, you weren't lying to me when you said this shoulder surgery is a bitch. He goes, man, everything I do hurts. So Sheldon is healing up just fine, I think. I haven't talked to him in about a week or two. But those first few weeks are a bitch. And once you get past month 4, that's when things start turning better. You're able to kind of function. You certainly can't test the limits with your strength, but that's when you really start feeling better. But every day leads to every week, and each month that goes by, it is a slow, agonizing process, but that's the way it goes down. Here's one from Spencer. Steve, given the fact that you have stone cold stunned Donald Trump, who will you be voting for in the upcoming election? Wow. This upcoming election is very, very interesting. I cannot bring myself to vote for Hillary Clinton. I will have to think if I will vote for Donald Trump. That's all I will say. Here's a football question from Juan Marshall. Hey, Steve, what was your favorite high school football memory and why? Who was your head coach? I'll tell you my favorite football memory. I was a proud member of the Edna Cowboys down there in Edna, Texas. My head coach was Bud Jackson. One time we were going through a hitting drill. Everybody's down in the 3 or 4 point stance and just firing off on the guy in front of him trying to whip his ass. Well, my head coach wasn't happy with what he was seeing. So he said, Williams, that's my real name, Williams, get down here. And he took a helmet off of another football player and put it on. He goes, on go, or on hut, let's go. I'm like, Coach, I said, you want me to hit you? He goes, I'll be okay, just hit me. Well, hell, man, that's my head football coach lining up opposite of me, and he wants to go head-to-head. Now, bear in mind, I'm in full football uniform, pads, shoulder pads, helmet, mouthpiece. He don't have a mouthpiece. He's not going to use a guy whose helmet he borrowed mouthpiece. So all he's got on is a helmet. And because I guess he was a lineman in college or a lineman in high school football, I don't know. He thought he was going to go against me. And at the time, I was running back. I was linebacker. I was just used to getting the football or tackling people on defense. He said, ready, set, hut. And when he said hut, I exploded out the damn gate. And we were only about 2 feet across from each other, if that. And, man, I plowed him on his back. And it was the goddamnest thing you ever saw. And so I guess he was going to teach the football team a lesson, but the lesson backfired. Or maybe I taught the football team a lesson about hitting. And, man, I remember I had my head straight up, didn't hit him with the crown of my helmet. That's hitting. You always put your face up. And I just literally drove into him and just buried his ass. And he got out of that kind of sheepishly. He handed the guy his football helmet and said, all right, let's go do the next drill. And I'm going into the next room because the guy's over here blowing with my goddamn lawn crew. All right, I've moved rooms once again. Got another question from Jason Venatelli in Middletown, New Jersey. He goes, hey, Steve, I want to ask you a quick question about getting color. Have you or someone you've ever worked with gotten too much color where you begin to feel sick or extremely weak? Flair always seemed to zipper himself beyond belief, and that famous shot of you and the sharpshooter pouring blood seemed like it would have affected performance. Well, I tell you what, Jason, when I got color that night, a pretty good amount of blood I lost. But I think I lost more blood in War Games 1992. And Flair certainly spilled his few buckets of blood, as did the great Dusty Rhodes and so many other guys. There's been some, there was that real bad job in ECW where that kid got cut open. That was pretty nasty, and that was very severe. But no, nothing where it affects your performance. But you kind of know, when you hit that gusher, you kind of know, hey, man, I'm losing a pretty good amount of blood. Because it's an interesting feeling when you gig yourself and blood starts pouring out, and you're trying to work that color out, sometimes kind of pushing a little bit so it pulses out. But if you start bleeding for a while, it's kind of like, hey, man, kind of enough is enough. But I don't think there's ever been a medical emergency, other than the thing that happened in ECW where there needed to be some medics called to the ring. Guys have gotten a little overzealous, getting some color. Triple H is always good for getting a lot of color. Shawn Michaels was. But I'll tell you this much. None of it ever affected me. I don't think none of it probably affected too many of the guys. You'd have to ask them specifically. I'll just remember after that match in Chicago at Rosemount Horizon against Bret Hart, WrestleMania 13, I remember going to the bar that night, and it took me about one beer, and I had a buzz. So I don't know how much blood I lost, but one beer gave me a buzz. And, of course, I had a couple of beers after that. But after that, I just kind of took it easy because that was a tough day at the office. And that's how it is when you're getting color in the ring. Hey, here's a little wrestling question for you. And it comes from Arnaldo. He said, Steve, you've said in the past that you hold a very valuable Intercontinental Championship held by Owen Hart, yourself, and many others. Would you take $11,000 for it? Shoot price. And I have the Intercontinental Championship. I think Warrior had this belt. Savage had this belt. Kurt Hennig probably had this belt. Who else had this belt? I can't even name all the people that had this belt, but this was the belt that everybody had before they started making all the different ones. Man, I wouldn't take anything in the world for this belt because it just means that much to me. It's just not for sale at any price. If I needed the money, I'd have to think about that. If I needed the money. It's got so many memories. It means so much to me. Getting dropped on my head and almost getting paralyzed over it. The fact that I was able to get up from that and come back and finish my career as a professional wrestler, and I'll never forget that moment. The belt means a lot to me. And I told Vince, I told him, I said, hey, man, I said, I want to keep this belt. And he goes, you can get another one made, but this one was mine. And Vince was cool with it. And I'll never sell that belt. Whenever I die, it will still be mine. I'll have to put it in my will to whoever I'm going to give it to. But it's an important belt, and it's a very historical belt just from the sense of who had it. I wish I had a list of all the guys who actually held this belt during their run, and now I have it in my safe. So it's just a very special belt. And I always considered the Intercontinental Championship belt to be really as important as a World Championship belt. You always want to be the World Championship, but back in the day, the IC belt was typically the guy that could work his ass off. And it was also a kind of a training belt for the World Championship belt. Sometimes guys get world belts and never get IC belt and vice versa. But there was really a whole lot of pride that came out of the guys that carried this particular belt. And it's badass. I won't sell it for shit. All right, here's a question from Rusty, and it's going to end up the Q&A thing, and it's a great question. That I don't know if I have the answer to. Steve, quick question I've never heard asked or answered before. When Taker and Mankind had their infamous cell match, they say the second fall wasn't planned. If the second fall through the top wasn't planned, how do you think they planned to get back down into the ring to finish the match? After the first fall, how could they have just crawled down? I feel like the second fall was planned. There's no way you can get off the cell a second time without another huge bump. Thoughts? Thank you, Rusty. Hey, Rusty, I can tell you for a fact, that second fall, okay, let's talk about the cell and cell match for a second. The first fall was when Undertaker kind of billed Mankind, I guess, threw him off the top of the cage, and Mick fell, I don't know how many feet, onto that announce desk and to the floor, and it was staggering. It was one of the damnedest things, toughest things I've ever seen in my life. And then they go back to the top of the cell. And then Taker was going to give Mick a choke slam, and he did. The cage was not supposed to break. I know that for a fact. but it was such impact from Mick being so high in the air, his body weight going against that hurricane fence. There wasn't enough ties up there to hold him down, and he crashed right through that fence and hit the mat in such a twisted fashion. I mean, it should have killed him. It could have killed him. It damn near did kill him. That was a complete failure of the fence to hold that weight. I don't know how they were going to get down there for the pinfall, or maybe the referee was going to count the fall on top of the cage. But that fall was not planned, because you've got to understand what kind of a risk that was. It's one thing to just say, hey, I'll take a pile driver, but just to say you're going to take a bump like that, and you're thinking, okay, the cage is going to slowly start breaking and ripping away in such a fashion it's going to let me down easy. Man, Mick has taken some dangerous bumps in his lifetime and has been in very many dangerous matches. But and I say this with respect, as crazy as Mick Foley is, as almost seemingly how impervious he is to pain, I just don't think he would have taken such a dangerous bump, because there's really no good way to look at the outcome of that bump or control his destiny, being his landing in a safe fashion from such impact through something which is the unknown, which is that fence, hitting that mat. So I don't know. Maybe next time I see Mick, I'll ask him, were you guys going to crawl down? What was the finish? Because I don't know, and that's something I've never asked Mick. As good a friend of he is to me, I've never asked him that, and that's a damn good question. So I'll follow up with you, and I'll get with Mick, and I'll ask him. But I can tell you right now on this podcast, I don't think that thing was planned for him to go through that cage. It was just too risky of a bump, and they had already risked it all when Mick took that first bump off that cage. Anyway, Mick Foley is one of the toughest human beings in the world. He's also a best-selling author. He's also back running Monday Night Raw. He's also the star or co-star of Holy Foley, the show he's doing on the WWE Network with his daughter Noelle and their entire Foley family. So Mick has done it all in this business and continues to do it, and doing it now in a much safer fashion. I appreciate everybody for sending in questions at SteveAustinShow.com. I'm coming right back to wrap this thing up. Okay, one last thank you before we wrap things up, and this one is to Diamond Dallas Page and DDP Yoga. Y'all know that DDP Yoga has changed thousands of lives, including the lives of some of your favorite pro wrestlers, Jake the Snake, Scott Hall, Mick Foley, AJ Styles, and Chris Jericho. And DDP Yoga can change your life too. And believe me when I say Dallas has made it real easy for you to get on the program. His new DDP Yoga Now app means you can do DDP Yoga anytime, anywhere, and you can do it right from your phone or your tablet. And the app has a lot more than just the workouts on it. By connecting to a Bluetooth heart rate monitor, you can track your calories and your heart rate in real time. You can track your pain, measurements, and progress photos too, all for free in the app. And like I said, you've got tons of workouts to choose from. The original DDP Yoga workouts, the new 2.0 workouts, and weekly live workouts from the DDP Yoga Performance Center. And to make it even easier than he's already made it, for a limited time, you can get the DDP Yoga DVDs for 20% off, plus 3 months of full access to the DDP Yoga Now app. Just go to ddpyoga.com/Austin. That's ddpyoga.com/Austin to take advantage of this great deal. Commit now. Change your life now. Go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to get started. All right, everybody, give me the go-home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. I want to say thank you very much to everybody who sent in questions at SteveAustinShow.com. I got through as many questions as I could. There was a lot of questions that I couldn't get to or that have already been asked, so if I didn't answer your question, that is the reason why. Hey, man, that last question that was asked to me about that finish of the Undertaker-Mankind match, the Hell in the Cell, that's my match for you guys to go back and watch. What was the finish supposed to be if it wasn't falling through the cage? I'm going to call Mick and ask him, see if he'll give me the answer. So anyway, check out the Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Mick Foley. One of the damnedest matches that's ever been done in the history of pro wrestling. Two tough-ass bastards giving it everything they got, and then some. And Mick Foley had to run out in my match, take a stunner from me, after all that he'd already put his body through. Mick Foley, truly one of the toughest guys in the history of the business, and one of the nicest guys I know. Hey, man, couple of quick plugs here before we ride off in the sunset. All my damn Broken Skull Ranch merch is over at ProWrestlingTees.com or BrokenSkullRanch.com. And I'm about to start laying out all the brand new shirts that I wore on this season of Broken Skull Challenge. Also, if you're a beer lover or an IPA lover, the best damn IPA on the planet is Broken Skull IPA over at El Segundo Brewing Company. And if you're in California, you can get it at Whole Foods and Total Wines. If you don't live in California, check InsideTheCellar.com or BrokenSkullRanch.com and see if they ship to your state. And one other plug, everybody needs a knife. The Steve Austin Broken Skull Pocket Knife from Cold Steel Knives is available. You can use it to open letters or defend yourself or cut a piece of rope or cut your seat belt if you get in an accident. You should always have a knife. I recommend that you go to Amazon.com and get the knife for $75. A knife of that quality at that price is a great deal. Thank you guys for supporting the sponsors of the Steve Austin Podcast. They're the ones that let me do this for you free twice a week. So big thanks to DDPYoga.com. Go to DDPYoga.com/Austin to get 20% off the DDP Yoga program and 3 months of full access to the DDP Yoga Now app. Big thanks to DraftKings. Go to DraftKings.com and use the promo code UNLEASHED to play for free with your first deposit this weekend. Big thanks to Dollar Shave Club. Get a month free when you sign up at dollarshaveclub.com/unleashed. Big thanks to Simply Safe. Go to simplysafeaustin.com. Get free shipping on your order and a free keychain remote, which is a $25 value. Big thanks to Loot Crate. Go to lootcrate.com/unleashed and save $3 off any new subscription. Big thanks to Onnit. Go to onnit.com/Steve and get 10% off your order. And of course, Amazon, who have been supporting this podcast since day one. Just use my Amazon links whenever you're doing any online shopping, and Amazon will kick back a couple of bucks to the podcast. It don't cost you nothing extra. There's no hidden fees, no extra charges. You can buy whatever you're planning on buying and help out the podcast in the process. You can find my Amazon links by going to podcast1.com, clicking the Killer Deals button in the top right corner of the page, then hitting the Steve Austin Show button. I got Amazon links for USA, UK, and Canada. So again, just go to podcast1.com, click the Killer Deals button in the top right corner, then click on the Steve Austin Show. All of my sponsors are there. Amazon links are there too. Amazon will kick back a couple of bucks at no charge to you to help us pay our production cost. Hey folks, if you bookmark it, you can find it very, very easy. Get your shopping done. Help out the podcast in the process. Folks, keep listening. The 60-second AP News headlines are coming up next. Here comes Hershey the Wonder Dog. She wants a treat. Moolah's right behind her. She wants a goddamn treat too. Until then, my name is Steve motherfucking Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
Download new episodes of Steve Austin Unleashed every Thursday at podcast1.com. That's podcastone.com.
Stay tuned for the latest AP News headlines from Podcast One right after this.
At Great Clips, we have clip notes. Notes that tell stylists exactly what you like every time. Because if you don't get your great haircut every time, unexpected things might happen to you. Without your haircut, your dog might mistake you as an intruder.
Bobo, it's me. Bobo, ow! Ow!
You might get put in a police lineup.
It's him! No, it's not me!
Avoid all the unexpected things that might happen to you with the wrong haircut. Go to Great Clips because they use clip notes. Notes that tell stylists exactly what you like. Great Clips. It's gonna be great.
Bobo!
AP Update. I'm Carlotta Bradley. The first World Series game in Wrigley Field last night didn't go the way local fans wanted. The visiting Indians blanked the Cubs 1-0 to take a 2-1 lead in the Fall Classic. On tap tonight, Game 4 with Corey Kluber facing John Lackey of the home team. Lackey says he's out to do his best.
This is why you play the game. I mean, this is why, this is why I'm still playing, at this stage of my career, at this age. I'm trying to win championships and trying to be a part of something special.
Indians Game 4 starter Corey Kluber says it's no